Between 1540 and 1542, hundreds of heavily armored Spanish conquistadors struggled through the American Southwest, driven by rumors of 7 cities made of gold. In many traditional accounts, this expedition is framed as a bumbling search for a mirage, where Native Americans appear only as passive witnesses to the Spanish arrival. But the soil at the Coronado Historic Site in Bernalillo tells a much more aggressive story. Researchers have recently recovered specific fragments of war, copper crossbow bolts, and heavy lead musket balls. These artifacts weren't scattered by explorers, they were dropped in combat. The physical evidence shows distinct lines of battle, revealing that Coronado's group arrived as an invading army. The placement of these weapons suggests the indigenous defenders had pre-planned their positions. They weren't reacting to a surprise. They were executing a defensive strategy designed to trap a force they had been tracking for years. Centuries before the Spanish arrived, the Zuni people maintained an interconnected trade network, functioning as an information highway. Through this system, they followed Spanish activity to the south, receiving reports of atrocities in Mexico, giving them years to prepare for the encounter. In 1539, that encounter arrived in the form of Estevanico. He was an African explorer serving as the vanguard scout for a smaller Spanish reconnaissance party. When Estevanico reached the pueblo of Hawiku, the Zuni interrogated him. Once they confirmed he was the forward scout for an invading force, they executed him to prevent intelligence from returning to the main Spanish camp. A Spanish friar, Marcos de Niza, saw the execution from a distance and panicked. He fled back to Mexico City, but instead of admitting defeat, he claimed he had seen a golden city larger than Mexico City itself. That lie had a massive ripple effect. It transformed a small Spanish intelligence mission into a full-scale military obsession, ensuring a much larger army would soon return. Coronado returned in 1540 with thousands of men. The Spanish marched into a despoblado, an unsettled wasteland, unaware they were being watched the entire time. The Zuni executed a tactical evacuation, moving elders, women, and children to fortified mesas. Only warriors remained to defend the multi-story adobe structures. As the Spanish attacked, the Zuni warriors fought a fierce delaying action. This wasn't meant to be a final stand, but a field test, an opportunity to study Spanish armor and cavalry tactics at close range. The defense was lethal. At the height of the battle, a heavy grinding stone was thrown from a rooftop, striking Coronado and knocking him unconscious. While the Spanish eventually took the pueblo, the Zuni had seen enough. Their steel and horses were too dangerous to fight in the open. To save their people, the Zuni shifted from physical warfare to psychological manipulation. The new strategy focused on a specific Spanish vulnerability, their absolute, blinding obsession with gold. Indigenous leaders deployed guides to infiltrate the expedition. One man, whom the Spanish called the Turk, was used to feed Coronado exactly what he wanted to hear. The Turk spoke of Quivira, a fabricated city to the east, where people ate off gold plates and the streets were lined with wealth. The Spanish took the bait. The Turk led the heavily armored army directly into the flat, endless expanse of the Great Plains, where there was no shelter, no gold, and little food. This misdirection kept the Spanish away from actual resources. Coronado's men marched past the rich turquoise mines of the Surreals Hills because they were too busy chasing a golden rumor across the plains. By weaponizing the Spaniards' very own expectations, the Pueblos managed to neutralize a superior military threat, marching them to the brink of starvation without ever meeting them on a battlefield again. The result was a total collapse for the Spanish. The expedition fractured, and Coronado eventually retreated to Mexico in financial ruin and political disgrace. Following this failure, the Spanish crown officially labeled the territory a wasteland. They effectively abandoned the region, halting further expansion for decades. This map shows the geographic extent of New Spain in the 16th century. Notice the void in the American Southwest. The indigenous defensive campaign successfully delayed Spanish colonization of this region for 60 years. Historians call this a case of double mistaken identity. The Spanish believed they were the only active players in an empty landscape, while the indigenous people were actually the ones controlling the expedition's movements. The story of the 7 cities of gold is ultimately a demonstration of how a smaller force used an invader's own psychology to protect their land and rewrite the map of North America.